The Owl in the Ark, as written by Mariette Edgar, a Scottish writer of humorous verse and monologue, probably better remembered for his whole series on Albert, the Lion and Albert, etc. Much of his work was performed by Stanley Holloway, and you'll remember him as Alfred P. Doolittle in My Fair Lady. I'm getting married in the morning, ding dong. Yeah. An essential pleasure in recording these pieces is the pleasure of Googling these people and discovering interesting things about them. For example, that Mariette Edgar was the half-brother of Edgar Wallace. Edgar Wallace was the celebrated crime writer, English crime writer. Among his credits, the original screenplay for King Kong. To discover that Stanley Holloway served with the Connacht Rangers and fought against the Irish rebels in the Rising of Easter 1916. But back to the business at hand. I always have difficulty with assuming an English accent, but I fall back on an English alphabet that I learned from an English chap called Nigel, who delighted in playing O'Carolan tunes on his lute at the regular session at the Unicorn pub on Eglinton Avenue. Where was I when John Lennon was shot? At the session at the Unicorn. Anyway, the business at hand. The English alphabet as taught to me by Nigel. A for horses, B for mutton, C for yourself, differential, E for oboys, F for vessons, G for police, H for beauty, I for knackanickinamorph, J for oranges, K for terrier, L for leather, M for Zima, N for a penny, N for a pound, O for easy, P for a leaf, Q for a pea, R for ash, S for Williams, T for two, U for ism, V for La France, double your money, X for ordinary, Y for husband, Z for crossing. Okay, all set for Mariette Edgar's The Owl in the Ark. One evening at dusk, Noah stood on his ark, putting green oil in starboard side lamp. His wife came along and she said, "Somewhat's wrong, our cabin is getting quite damp." He said, "Is that so?" And he went down below and found 'twere true what she said, for there on the floor quite a puddle he saw. 'Twere slopping round under the bed. There must be an hole in the bottom somewhere. Better find it before we retire. And he thinks for a bit, and he said, "That's it. A bloodhound is what we require." So he went and fetched bloodhound from place where it lay, between skunk and polecat it were, and as things down below being a trifle so-so, it were glad of a breath of fresh air. Well, they followed the hound as it went sniffing around, till at last it located the leak. 'Twere there in the side, about 2 inches wide, where a swordfish had poked in its beak. And by gum, our water came in through that hole. And Noah, who at sums was expert, worked it out on a slate that it came at the rate of per gallon per second per squirt. The bloodhound tried hard to keep water in check by lapping it up with his tongue, but it came in so fast through that hole that at last it stuck his nose in as a bung. Well, poor faithful hound, it very near drowned. They dragged him away none too soon, for the stream as it rose pushed its way up his nose, blew him up like a balloon. Then Mrs. Noah stuck her toe in the hole. "I'm fine, really, don't be ridiculous." But she found very soon, as she altered her tune, when the water squirted up her particulars. When she found that her foot weren't doing much good, she said, "Noah, I have an idea. You sit on the leak, and by the end of the week, there's no knowing, the weather might clear." Well, Noah didn't think much of this notion at all, but he thought he'd give it a try. On the old down he flopped, and water all stopped, and all except him were quite dry. Well, they brought him his breakfast, his dinner and tea, as day after day there he sat, till the rain had all passed, and they landed at last on topside of Mount Ararat. And that's how Noah brought them all safe ashore. And ever since then, strange to tell, them as helped save the ark all bear a mark, and all their descendants as well. That's why dog has cold nose, and ladies cold toes. And you'll find too, if you inquire, that's why a man takes his coattails in hand and stands with his arse to the fire.